Good morning, everyone. My name is Mighty Stream, and today is August the 19th. I'm going to do your spiritual principle day in a meditation for August the 19th. I'm brought to you by Hope Through Navigation, and this is our Hood Recovery Services. You can reach me at recoveryofhope21@gmail.com. I'm hoping that you're having a beautiful day. Let's go ahead and get into that reading. Let's see. Let me share the screen. And I believe I have it on photo. All right. August the 19th. Inclusiveness means any addict. All addicted persons are welcome and equal in obtaining the relief that they are seeking from their addiction. Every addict can recover in this program on equal basis. Taken from the basic text, chapter 6, tradition 3. Many of us who have been around NA for a little while have no doubt that the NA program is for any addict. Our literature and our traditions clearly state that any addict with a desire to stop using should be able to find a place in our fellowship. Making that ideal into a reality requires more than telling newcomers to focus on the similarities rather than differences. It requires us to actively make space in our meetings for any addict, regardless of ... I was the only person who looked like me in the rooms where I got clean, a member shared. People told me to focus on the similarities, and all I could think was, that's pretty easy for you. Everyone looks like you. Then I heard someone say, one day you'll hear someone who is nothing like you share your story. And it clicked. I needed to hear that. It's okay that we're not all the same. Our stories are similar even when we're not. I don't have to ignore real parts of who I am to belong here. Making space for any addict requires taking an honest look at ourselves and our communities. Society outside of our meeting has all sorts of social strata. Differences in language, ethnicity, culture, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, and financial status can present challenges. And some might prefer it if distinctions like these melted away at the door to our meeting. But they're often all wrapped up in who we are as people, and our distinctions are assets to NA, not problems to be solved. We can tell newcomers that our differences don't matter, but if our meetings are largely made up of people from similar backgrounds, it can look like NA is no more inclusive than the rest of society. When we share openly about our differences and encourage others to do so, too, our distinctions enrich the NA fellowship. Being who we are helps newcomers identify and relate and stay. Focusing on the similarities does not mean I need to ignore the differences. I will share honestly about who I am, differences and all, and honor the experiences of addicts who are not like me. Well, that was a mouthful. Wow, I don't even know where to start with that. Do you? I mean, really, we do say, right? We do honestly say all the time, focus on the similarities and not the differences. And I think sometimes what that means to the people that are in our meetings that are different is that don't pay attention to what you see as being different. Pay attention to the fact that you're an addict and you can seek recovery in this meeting just like anyone else. I don't think there's this intent to tell them, don't focus on the fact that you're female and this is a male dominated meeting. Like there's more men here all the time than there are women. Don't focus on that. I don't really think that that is our intention, but with this meditation, talking about inclusiveness, it is suggesting that it's possible that the newcomer might understand what we're saying the wrong way, right? They might say, okay, well, I mean, everyone here is male, and I am one of 3 females in this large meeting. And yeah, it's kind of obvious that it's a men's meeting. It feels that way. So how am I supposed to be able to get my recovery if I have to travel way out of my way to get to a meeting that has more women, right? So we're not dismissing the differences. I think that's important for us to say here. And I believe this meditation, the spiritual principle today is inclusiveness, means any addict, and it approaches it, although it doesn't give a whole lot of wiggle room for those of us that do say focus on the similarities and not the differences. But that is how we mean it. We don't ever mean, I personally don't ever mean that your differences aren't welcomed. I always mean when I say that if you don't leave before the miracle happens, you are going to hear your story come from someone that you barely even know. And 9 times out of 10, they don't have too much in common with you as far as appearances or personality, except for the fact that they are addicts. And you will be amazed when you hear your story come from someone that is on the polar opposite of you in society. I was amazed the first time I heard a male share that they were traumatized the way that I was when I was younger. I could not believe how God used that gentleman's story to crack my heart wide open towards men in general, and definitely the men in the rooms of recovery. He used that to crack my heart wide open. I can also remember the first time I heard a white person, a Caucasian, share how awkward they felt in a meeting that was predominantly people of color, Latinos and African Americans, Blacks, right? And the first time they shared where they were at and that this was the only place they could get to a meeting, but that they were experiencing this feeling of being the minority for the first time. The first time I heard it, I wasn't sympathetic. I was like, this is our whole life. Like, we're in the hood making this meeting because we're in the hood. This is our whole life. We still have to go out and work and, engage people in everyday living, and we are not the dominant race. So welcome to my world, right? I was very standoffish about, I was like, okay, and so keep coming back because I guess right now we're all you have, right? But when you can do better and you get a job and you can go clear on the other side of town, you'll probably move there and that's where you'll make your meetings and when we get to area, you'll be one of those individuals that always reminds us that we're the minority in this society. Your ideals, your thoughts. I had that very dismissive attitude. It wasn't until they continued to share how desperate they were. Like they were so close to using again because they could not embrace the different culture and they were struggling with their own prejudices. And they never thought that it would be people of color that would be there, that hold the answer of recovery for them, which we don't, right? We all do. But for them, they didn't have a choice of where else they could make a meeting. And they were waking up to the fact that they had experienced privilege without even being aware of it, even in their addiction. They didn't have the same depths of loss that people of color had experienced. And they were starting to share, like, they felt like, I don't say remorseful or anything, but they felt like this deep, deep understanding. They had a spiritual awakening of just how difficult something as simple as the color of your skin can actually make your life. And they were grateful, but they were also wrestling with this kind of guilt thing, and then convincing themselves that they deserved recovery. And I thought to myself, I would never discount my recovery because the people in the room didn't look like me. I would keep coming back and dare them to kick me out of that meeting. That's not going to happen. And when they shared just how close they were going back to using because they were so uncomfortable, my mind and my heart and my spirit cracked open for them. And I was like, don't let your standoffishness or your funky attitude, Mighty Stream, Miss Spiritual Woman of the Year, don't let your thinking be the reason why we lose this addict seeking recovery. And I started to share, and I started to reach out, and I started to embrace and invite into my life on a more personal level, even though it was somewhat uncomfortable. I started to do that, and I shared about being raised by a white man and a Black woman, and I shared about what it did to me to have my stepfather, my white stepfather, give me away at my wedding instead of my biological Black father, because he would show up once a year at least, but he wasn't raising me, right? He wasn't raising me. My daddy, my father, was this white man, and having him give me away to my husband meant everything to me. And did I feel my father's pain watching me walk down that aisle and seeing him and my stepfather, really not even my stepfather, the father that stepped up, right? Dance that first dance with me instead of him. Yeah, I felt that. I definitely felt that. And I wasn't clean by any means at that time, right? But I started to share how I felt and how I have been catapulted into society in places where I was always the odd man out. I was always the minority. And so I felt like this thing woke up in me that said, you need to make inclusiveness a real thing in this meeting, because there weren't actually many people in this particular home group of mine that had my story. They did not. There were several people that could relate in a sense to mixed relationships, but there weren't very many at that time back in the early 90s that had been raised the way that I had been raised. And so I felt that I could use my experience, strength, and hope to give this person hope. And it worked out to be the way I thought it was going to be. And they moved up, they got education, got a master's degree. They didn't get a PhD, but they just went on to do great exploits. And occasionally would come back to this particular home group to let us know that they valued us and appreciated us. But their life, their trajectory of their life, even in recovery, took them to the suburbs and took them away from us. But they always maintain a spirit of gratitude. And they're one of the more active individuals today in recovery in this region, right? They do a lot of service work, and they're reputable when it comes to doing service work, and rightly so. They also happen to be an individual that a lot of women of color ask them to sponsor them. And I believe in how we say, in a sense, we have to earn our stripes. I believe because of how their recovery started, that people in my community just embraced her and loved her, and she loved us back. She was never my sponsor, but I saw that, like, she was easily able to cross racial lines and live out this concept of inclusiveness in her own life and in her own recovery. And I'm sure if some people, from my area might hear this, they'll know exactly who I'm talking about, because she's just that special. She is just that special. And there's several others that in this community, we've crossed the lines of race and we have become blended in this community. Yes, of course, you can go to some meetings that are still predominantly women, still predominantly all males, still predominantly one race or the other, but there's more. This is a large area of recovery, regionally speaking, and there's more inclusiveness in our meetings. I remember telling Monty one time that I'm not going to no women's NA meeting. I mean, if I go to a women's NA meeting, I'm basically saying that because I'm a woman, I'm somehow. So what happens when a man wants to come into and today you might definitely have that because you have individuals, LGBTQ, transgender. And so are we going to say, don't come to this meeting because you're not female? I doubt that, right? And it wasn't until I was at some major convention and they were having a women's workshop that I got a real big dose of humility for even making that statement, because there are some definite differences, and the level of freedom to share about some of the things that we experience as women became very evident to me. And I was like, man, I gotta go back and tell that recovering person, I am so that was so naive, right? So arrogant. And so you need to look at how can you be more inclusive of any addict? Now, I've shared with you my story, a couple of my stories, but I'm sure you have your own and you're going to need to share that. Okay. Well, I enjoyed talking to you, and I am going to be talking to you tomorrow.